job is to praise and worship. The Lord deserves our full attention. Can I tell something on myself? I took my wife out one time to eat for my anniversary, and I got in trouble because we had sat where we were sitting down. There was a TV screen, and there was a comic. Cartoons were on. If you know anything about me, I don't do anything Saturday till I get my cartoons done. But she didn't think much of me taking her out to spend time with her and watching. Who was that? Somebody's laboratory. I don't remember. Huh? Dexter. That's his name. I think that's what was on. And you know, she had a right to be upset because she didn't have my full attention. I did not, you don't get any brownie points with your wife when you do that. It is so good to come to church, but I don't believe you could come for lots of reasons, but unless it's about Jesus, you're not going to get any brownie points for that. I want to talk to you a little bit today about creating your world. You hear me say a lot, and I believe this, that we get what we deserve eventually. In this life and in the life to come, we're going to be rewarded according to our works. And we can choose to shape the world that's around us into a pleasant place to live. Or we can sow seeds that makes us just a terrible place. Just a terrible place. And it has a lot to do with, we do it very similar to the way that God did it in the beginning. God made everything, and in the beginning he was hovering there over chaos, if you would please. He said, "Let there be light." And there was light. You create so much through your words, so much of the life that you're going to have, so much of the wife that you have is created, men, by the words that you speak to her. Wives, so much of the husband that you have is being made by the words that you speak to him. It took me a while to figure that out, but I sort of figured it out. Not that I don't look over my wife's shoulders and watch cartoons sometimes when I shouldn't. But I finally got to the place I know when I've messed up. My wife's got a cup at the house. I bought her a coffee cup and a little present one time because that coffee cup, whenever I see it, I remember I messed up. But there came a time in me and my wife's life that we had begun to drift apart. I've shared that with you. I did not have a clue. And one day that she told me, flat out told me she didn't love me like she used to. Broke my heart. But it began to make me want to change some things. And as everything, see, God created everything. Every time He spoke something into being, it was good because why? Because God is good. Oftentimes we want to go through life, we want to change everything around us in our life, but without realizing that the beginning of creation of our world begins in here. Before we can change anything out here with our words, we have to change it in here. And I did not understand, but somehow instinctively I began to pray, Lord, make me gentle. Because that's what my wife needed. Sometime after that, if you'd like, I could give you a copy of it. When I began understanding what was going on, I preached a message called Feeding the Fire. I had a CD out for a long time. But it has to do with the fact that you realize To get what you want, you have to learn to give something what it needs. You don't do it with that reason. I didn't choose to try to be a different man because of something I wanted out of my wife. That was just a bonus that came on later that I didn't even know about. I just knew that I wasn't the man that I should be. I wasn't the husband that I should be. That I was falling short when it come to ministering unto her needs. And so I began to pray, God, make me gentle, make me gentle. And you'll have to ask my wife. But every once in a while, she calls me a gentleman. And I begin to sow into her. I begin to change my marriage by the things that I began to sow into her. Sometime after that, I had walked up, and I've had several names for my wife through our lives. When we first got married, I was 70s child. I called her woman. I looked the hippie part. I probably scared my neighbors to death. I was going to church, but I drove this old van, had real long hair. I had one of those old fisherman hats that I wore everywhere till my wife messed up and washed it and it fell apart. But I forgot where I was going with that. But that we'd shared very many things together. We began to walk, and as we changed one another. Years later, I called her woman then, and then sometimes I call her darling. If you got a pet name for your wife, pick a good one. Runt might not be a really good choice. Old woman, ball and chain, let's kind of get rid of those. And start using ones that make them actually want to hang out with us. But anyway, I've got a habit of calling her Beauty. To me, she'll be that till she's 95 if I live that long. And I remember walking up, and my wife was standing with a group of women, and I just called her Beauty. It was my nature. And a woman there said, no one's ever called me that. And I don't know if I reacted or not, but I remember thinking, this is a nice lady, attractive enough, and married. And I thought that was tragic. To me, that's tragic. It's stuck in my mind all these years. A wife should never have to go through life and never hear that. A child shouldn't go through life and not hear that. A grandmother shouldn't go through life and not hear that. Beauty, we know, you're all smart enough. That's why you come to church. You know that beauty is more than just out here. My wife told someone this the other day. She works in a store. She said God was smart. He let us marry young, so we go accustomed and we love one another. Then when we start falling apart in front of one another, it don't really matter that much. I look at myself in the mirror sometime and I think, goodness, I look like I got drugged behind a truck somewhere. I don't look like anything like I did when I was young. I don't think you'd recognize me in my baby pictures. It isn't the age, it's the mileage. And sometimes I feel high mileage. But those words, they come out not because I practice them, because they're natural for me. They're just natural for me to use, because that's the way that I feel about her. They would have no authority. They would have no power behind them. Women recognize a pickup line when they hear it. But they can also, there's something genuine about a word that's spoken in love that just goes to the depths of your soul, does it not? Sometimes it's not big words. It's just little things, little gifts. But it all begins here. The creating the world that we want doesn't begin with so much changing anything out here, but it begins with changing what's in here. Now, I will tell you this about sowing seed. As you begin to change your world, the Bible says, cast your bread upon the water. He says, after many days it shall return unto you. He said, divide your portions between, I think it was 6 and 7 if I remember correctly, there in the 11th chapter of Ecclesiastes. He says, because you don't know what's going to prosper. But you know what is not going to work. You should know what's not going to work. And so we shed love abroad. The church, if it's doing its job, not everyone that comes here is going to stay here. Though it will break our hearts to see them go. And not everyone that we reach out to will return the love that we've shown them. But still, that doesn't have to change us at all. Love should come out of us not because we're looking for something in return. Love should come out of us because that's just who we are. That's just who we are. If I went around, it would have been conniving, wouldn't it, if I decided I was going to change a few phrases here and there, get my wife to like me a little more. But at the very beginning, I realized where the change had to come from was in me. And so I began to pray and ask God to help me with that. And He did. And as I changed the world, I kept sowing the words that I want. And I still believe in that. When we come to church and I say, I'm glad to see you, I'm glad to see you. If I say thank you, I'm not politicking. I don't know how to do that. I'm appreciative. But I believe that as a body of believers, if we begin by changing ourselves, that we can change each other in so many valuable ways. I need you. I need what God's put in you. It's something unique and special. And I believe in God's Spirit able to accomplish what He wants through you. But we're going to create this world, and we're going to do it by a couple different ways. If I can pass on anything to men, listen to this, men. If you want to change your wife, it's change your words to the ones, and you start that by changing here. The Bible says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So the way you feel, if you feel negative toward her, it will come out. But if somewhere deep down inside you, you just love her, that's going to come out too. And by touch. I was talking to someone not that long ago, and I said, this I've learned. You can't touch your wife enough. Maybe she thinks I do. Because sometimes I'll just walk from the living room. I'm just passing through. Walk from the living room to the bedroom where she's working. Give her a kiss, walk out. Walk in 15 minutes. I feel like I need to walk to the bedroom. Give her a kiss, walk out. Stop her in the hall. I probably get on her nerves, okay? So pray for her. But if I'm going to err on any side, I'm going to err on that touch too often. People have their private life. As they come to church, and if someone's missing for a little bit, take a risk, reach out and call them. Because it's better to do it. They feel like they're being bugged. They would rather go through life thinking this church bugs me than this church doesn't love me. It took me a long time to figure that out too, because I'm a private person. You know, you call me on the phone if I'd lost my leg and you asked me how I was doing, I'd probably say, well, I'm doing okay considering. Because I understand what it is to be a private person. But I've been to two different kind of churches. People who swamp you, then other churches. Some places I've been that I might know two people and then been there 10 times. Two people maybe come up and shake my hand. Maybe one of them was a preacher. We ought not to do that. If that's the kind of church we're standoffish, what are we going to create? We're going to create a church that's standoffish. We don't want that. We're creating our words through our words. But it's not going to work. Don't hug someone and tell them you love them if you don't love them. But if you feel that come over you, sometimes just that human touch. I love watching the way that you guys mingle. I love the fact that you hug one another's neck, and shake one another's hand, and talk to one another. It shows something, God doing something. There's a man by the name of Jeremiah, and there's several things that we can learn from him. This is Jeremiah, the first chapter. It goes like this. I think I put this on. Yes, I did. This is what people call the call of Jeremiah. This is when he first hears God's voice. And his life is going to change. Some of it was hard, because we call Jeremiah the weeping prophet. His sadness was that he preached a long time and no one listened to him. But it was something in him that compelled. One time he said, just preaching causes me nothing but problems. I said that. I admit. Preaching causes me nothing but problems. He said, so I'm going to be quiet. And he said, the Bible says, I don't know if you heard the phrase, but he says, like fire shut up in my bones. Mamas and daddies understand that just a little bit. You ever know that you need to be quiet when it comes to your kids, but you just got to tell them something? Even if you know they're going to think you're nagging. It's like, you ought not to do that. You know, you just... And I try real hard not to do that, and sometimes I've had to apologize as I'm being preachy. Excuse me. But it's hard to care not to say something sometimes. The word of the Lord came to me. I choose you before I formed you in the womb. I set you apart before you were born. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. That is a specific, chosen for a specific purpose. Which God has for you. Oftentimes when preachers talk about being called for a specific purpose, church folks start thinking deacons and elders and so forth. Yes, that's true, but there's more than that. It blesses me to see Linda Bring and her mom, Miss May or Mays? May. I got a friend of mine named Dennis May. I think I can remember that. Part of what her calling is in her life is her mom. Part of her mom's calling in her life is her daughter. Husbands and wife, if you sit together, look at one another, because you're called to be something in one another's life. Grandmas and moms and friends, we're called to be something in our life, something ordained by God. It has sometimes to do with speaking, sometimes to do with helping, sometimes to do with touching, but we are called to do something. So, to begin to create this world, we got to recognize that we look around us and we see what is the purpose that we are placed here for. The one that God has specifically called us to. Sometimes it's a grandma's prayer for her grandchild that will save him from death. What is it that you're called to do? But I protested, oh no, Lord God, look, I don't know how to speak since I'm only a youth. In other words, I don't think I can do this. We react in pressure in two different ways. One is that we want to fight. One is that we want to run. And neither one is necessarily what God wants us to do. And most of the time we want to run because we feel overwhelmed. I can't cope with this anymore. I can't deal with this person anymore. I can't deal with this church anymore. I can't handle that preacher. It gets on my last nerve. Any of you got last nerve? My last nerve. Old country saying. But it's that voice. When you're trying to create the world that you want, you think that God wants. You'll find there's a voice often in the person that you're sowing into that you need to recognize where they come from. God recognized his voice, and he goes on and says, then the Lord said to me, do not say I'm only a youth, for you will go to everyone I send you to and speak whatever I tell you. Do not be afraid of anyone, for I will be with you to deliver you. This is the Lord's declaration. King James, thus saith the Lord. When God created everything in the beginning, it was pristine. There wasn't any bad seed, so to speak of. But in our lives, that's not true. We come into our marriages, we come into our church life, we come into friendships, we become moms, we become dads. All of these things we become, and we're carrying baggage, frankly. And we have to learn to discern what voice it is that we hear. When I heard that woman said, no one's ever called me that. What was the root of that, do you think? Where do you think that come from? I think it come from something that was missing in her life. Now, I can be wrong. Lord knows I'm wrong enough. But from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Why would, I don't know why that even stuck out to her, except for, I think it touched a tender part in her, something that she was missing. I remember one time I lived in Bono Village. It was a group of apartments. And I was sitting out back with my wife, and my daughter was playing. And a woman across the way seen us, never talked to this woman before, but she came and talked to us. You know why? Because it comes after a while. She kind of told us her story. What she did, she looked out and seen the whole family, and that's something that she didn't have. Her husband had left her some years before, and that wasn't the last tragedy in her life. When her daughter turned 16, she chose to go live with her mom, with her dad. She felt rejected. And what she seen was, the reason she was drawn to me, she felt compelled to come talk to me, was because there was something that was missing in her life. And we've got to learn to recognize that voice. Oftentimes, when I met my wife, after a while, I began to figure out the baggage that she was carrying. I tend to look at this as, have you heard the phrase invasive species? It's something that's been introduced into an environment that never was really meant to be there. And because of it, it's choking out even the good things. As other wildlife or other plants or whatever, it's just basically begin to take over. And most of us have one of those things in our life. Those things that, if we're careful, kind of cripple us emotionally, cause us to hurt, to feel negatively about ourselves or whatever it is. You know what the name is in your life. And folks, it's an invasive species. When I got to know my wife, I found that there was things that were planted in her that weren't good for her. Things that, deep things that she believed about herself that weren't true. And you know how you weed them out? By preaching the exact opposite. I'm a big believer in the exact opposite. If you are shy, be bold. Do something bold. If you're afraid, do something brave. And if there's a lie that we're hearing, then speak the truth to that lie. And so I begin to do that. That's weeding, okay? I'm trying to tear out. I will tell you this, that if this has been a long time in someone's life, seldom is it totally gone. But you keep attacking it again. You're defending it against the devil, so to speak. It's your place. It's yours. It belongs to you. And it belongs to God. And when you hear those voices, you need to speak to those voices. My wife's not here and wouldn't embarrass her, but we was having practice another night and she started crying. And the guys, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee. I don't know if they could hear me or not, but I was there was something, I think it was speaking lies to my life. And I addressed those things. They weren't true. She is valuable to me, and her gifts are many. And I can't imagine my life without her. And oftentimes, how many of us sometimes feel like we're just no good at it anymore? What's the voice that's talking to us? It's some sort of weed got in there. I say let's get rid of it. Husbands, and your wife is feeling that, talk to that spirit. This ain't how you talk to it. Why, you ignorant woman? Don't you just love it, ladies, when we talk so sweet? You ignorant, stupid woman. No. Speak the truth. Not flattery, but the truth when you hear that voice. Keep speaking the truth. It's kind of like there for a moment they feel lost. And you're talking to them, you're trying to draw them to you. They're follow my voice. Follow my voice. They can draw strength from you if you believe them. Tara, I knew her in her short life, but during a youth camp here, I was trying to encourage the gifts that was in her. And I had her sing something we was having services twice a day. And I had her sing a service one night. And she kept hearing voices said that she couldn't do it. I could tell by the things that she said. And she kind of fixed her eyes on me, and I looked at her. You can do this. You ever have somebody look at you? I know you can do this. You can do this. It's the same thing you do, ladies, with your kids. You set them over here. You're just mean, and you back up over here. You can do this. And we need to do that for one another every now and then, because there's these voices, these things have been planted into us. They're seeking to overcome our world. As you hear them voices in the congregation, I can't hear everything that's said, but if you hear the one, try to listen from the place that it's coming from, and you deal with that. I'm trusting the God in you to help me out with that, because it's not of the Lord. The Lord speaks to this. He speaks to it and He says, I have given you the strength to do this. There's a saying that I heard just real recently, and it speaks to me all the time. The Spirit of God will not lead me to where the grace of God will not keep me. There's no place that I'm going in this life. David said, he said, though I ascend into the heavens, he said, or have descended into hell, he says, you are there. You are there. There is no place that I'm going to have to go in this life, no pain that I'm going to have to face, that the grace of God will not be sufficient. And the Lord speaks to this. I'm with you. If I've called you to be a preacher, I have to remind me of this one. God has called me to be a preacher, He's going to be with me. Sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say before I get up here. Lord, you called me. You told me you did. So I'm going to trust you. If God has called you to be a grandma, then He'll give you the grace to be a godly one. A wife, a grace to be a godly one. Men, a grace to be a godly man. Then the Lord reached out His hand, touched my mouth, and told me, look, I have filled your mouth with my words. It's that touch I was talking about. What saddens me, and I was trying to stress a little bit this morning, praise and worship is actually an opportunity for you to touch God. It's for you. It's actually one of the most intimate moments that I know of with God. I have felt God reading the Word. I have felt God on my knees praying and asking the Lord. I have felt the Spirit of God touch me when I preach or teach. But I can tell you the honest truth that I experience God more in praise and worship than anything else in my life. Especially when what's in here, what I was trying to point out, what's in here connects with what's coming out here. You are above all. You are worthy to be praised. You step down from the darkness. It's you, Lord. It's you, Lord. It's you, Lord. It's you. And then you can feel that touch. There was a man who had leprosy. If you know anything about the history of leprosy, when you was afflicted with leprosy, that meant in those days that you had to separate yourself from everyone. You could not touch anyone. You couldn't come into town like everyone else. Not only that, you had to wear a covering over your face, and if anyone approached you and happened to not notice that you were leprous, you were to say, unclean, unclean. And a leopard, I get these pictures in my brain, but I see he came to Jesus. I don't know how close he got. He says, Lord, if you will, you can make me whole. Words and touching. He says, it's my will. And he touched him. Can you imagine what it would have been like? I don't know how long that man was in that kind of shape. All them years without a human touch, maybe. And just a moment of time, someone looked at him with so much compassion in his heart, with power to change their lives. Don't you know you have power to change the world just by your touch, just by what you say? Yes, you do. One of the lies of Satan is that I can't change this situation I'm in. I do not believe that. It will change. The Lord will deliver you out of it, or He will give you peace through it. But in either way, your situation changes. Then the Lord reached out His hand, touched my mouth, and told me, look, I have filled your mouth with my words. See, today I've set you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and demolish, to build and plant. There is something in all of us when we come to God that has to be tore out. False concepts, wrong beliefs. Sometimes this might be something as simple as low self-esteem. God did not want that there. And oftentimes where His beginning work in all of our lives, if we came to Jesus, was a broken-hearted, knowing that I'm a rotten sinner. When I came to the Lord, I came crying over my sin. It was God tearing something down in me. But He did not leave me that way, because He started to build me up through the Scriptures. If you don't have a time that you study the Scriptures, then please find one. If you do, God will speak with you. begin to learn what it is. Maybe if it's too hard to worship here, pick you a closet somewhere, turn up the radio so your neighbors don't hear you, and sing with a gospel tape until you just feel that flowing out of you directly into the presence of God so that you can touch Him. And then let Him begin to change your world, and let Him teach you how to make a difference in what's going on in your life. He wants to make a difference. And He's going to do that from the inside out. The inside out. I appreciate the fact that you all come here every week. Even if you're coming for the wrong reason. It's better to do the right thing for the wrong reasons than not do the right thing at all. Sometimes I come to church on Sunday morning because I'm supposed to be here. Can I just tell you? I fell back to sleep this morning. And when I got up, I did not want to get up. I was sleeping good. Okay. People don't think much of it when the preacher don't show up. So I don't always do the right thing for the right reasons either. But oftentimes I find that when I push myself to do the right things, then I experience God. I get myself around God's people and somebody will lift me up. I get it where I hear a gospel song and let it settle into my soul, it lifts me up. Let God do that for you today. Plan your world. I'm sorry to say, when Dad started this building, there was no blueprint. I said, Dad, I laid out this front wall. I said, Dad, what size windows do you want? I don't know. Well, I said, okay, I made them big. I said, just, Dad, don't buy windows bigger than this. He found a sale. He had to tear out all these headers that I put in here to make it bigger. The bathrooms are where they're at because the concrete guy decided that's where they belong. And we plan our lives that way too, don't we? You know why I'm a carpenter? Because the first guy that I met in high school says, you want a job? Okay, sure. It turned out pretty good. It's got a lot of freedoms, but it's not like I planned it. If you want something different in your life, let's plan it. I'm going to do this different today. And until it becomes a habit with me, this is what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to add another one on. Something good, something that God would want. And I'm going to do that until it becomes a habit with me. And every day, push yourself out just a little bit further from your comfort zone. And expect God to move. And expect God to move.